on cigars and cigar makers, and he has a really interesting program. And he also had, you gotta tell him we have another connection that maybe he doesn't know about. So he is on the board of the Potosi Brewery in Potosi, Wisconsin. And so that's why he usually can't come on Tuesday, so we've been waiting a very long time for him to have a Tuesday when he could come. And, but when the museum at Potosi, and they were just restoring the brewery, Marcella has one that she wants signed. So we'll sign it. She's busy back there talking. So this is going to be a great
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. No problem. No problem whatsoever. Let's see if we can see a little better. These are my notes that I put together. I'll introduce myself. My name is Merle Vastine. A lot of people want to know right away where you're from, what do you do, where you've been, so forth. So I was born on September the 1st of 1937. So that makes me 85 years old. I'm going to be 86 the 1st of September coming up. Been married to my lovely wife for 64 years, and we're still going strong. We have 8 children, 19 grandchildren, and 14 great-grandchildren so far. So that's a brief. I was educated in Davenport, Iowa. I was educated in the Catholic school system, St. Paul's, and then St. Ambrose Academy, and then St. Ambrose College. So my profession was an engineer with the Iowa, Illinois Gas and Electric Company, and I was there for 36 years before I retired. Had a part-time auction business, which I used to see Marcella at quite a bit, and I was at that for 43 years. So 8 years ago I gave that up and decided I'd do something else. Well, right now I'm actually on the board of directors of the Potosi Brewing Company. I'm on the board of directors of the National Museum, which is in Potosi. And by the way, they rank those museums in the world, and we're ranked #1. If you want to see #2, you have to go to Belgium. So but we have a very nice museum. We have a research library that's second to none. We have people come from all over the country to do research work there. We have college students. We have people interested in different cities, different brewery organizations, and so forth. So that's kind of a brief synopsis. Oh, I'm also the president of Scott County Preservation, Scott County Historical and Preservation Society. We call that SHIPS in Davenport. Frank's also a member with me. Frank and I do a lot of things together. I have a history club at my house every Wednesday afternoon. I do a lot of volunteer work at the German American Heritage Center in Davenport, which if you've never been there, fantastic place. If anybody's got German descent, go there. They have what they call the immigrant experience there. They got a lot of kiosks, things you can look at. It's a fantastic museum. I'm also with, Frank and I both work with the GRG, which is called the Gateway Redevelopment Group. And that's a group that tears down old buildings and houses. We save all the materials out of it, and we use it we either use it over in old people that are redoing buildings and houses, or we actually sell it to people, you know, so they keep the group going. It's called the Gold Coast in Davenport. If you've never been there, we do a tour every other year of about 5 different old homes in Davenport, which is, it's a fantastic thing. I also volunteer with the German, it's called the Schützenpark Guild, which is an amusement park in Davenport. It was in business about 50 years. It closed in 1920, and we still try to keep the history of that alive because it was a German park, and of course, I am of German ancestry too. So, okay, now we'll start out with the cigar industry. Does anybody know what a stripper is? A lot of ladies here. Okay, well, if you go back in the late 1800s and early 1900s city directories of Davenport, you'll see a lot of women's names behind it says stripper, because they gave their job, whatever they were doing, you know. So I got kind of interested, and I thought, boy, this city must be a city of ill repute with all these strippers in it. Well, once in a while you'd find it says cigar stripper. Well, they should have had cigar stripper in front of all of those. We had literally probably 1,000 people in Davenport that worked as a cigar stripper. Also in the cigar industry, we started in about 1852 in Davenport, and we ran up till about 1956. So about 104 years of actual cigar makers listed in the city directories. I decided one day that I should get a book together, so I have a good friend of mine, Tom Quinn, who lives in Ottumwa, and Tom said, let's do a book on Davenport. I said, Tom, that's a good idea. So with some of Tom's help and my all the props that I had, we decided we'd do a book on Davenport. So far there's been a book done on Davenport, Ottumwa, I think Burlington, Oskaloosa, but it's pretty much refined to that. And people say, well, why did they have such a cigar industry in Davenport? And because the Germans came over and they liked cigars and beer. So beer and cigars kind of went together, you know. And so I'm going to ask you a question. If you haven't read the book, you probably know this, but how many cigar manufacturers do you think we had in Davenport in 104 years? Anybody want to take a guess?
25.
That's a pretty good guess. Anybody else?
50.
That's a good guess. How about 239?
Wow.
They're all listed in my book. The years that they were in business, the location where they made cigars at. Now, some of these people didn't have a big fancy building, so what they did was they did them in their garages, their basements, and in their homes, probably in their dining rooms, whatever. A lot of them were small-time people, but then there were a lot of big-time people. And the big-timers, there's about 5 or 6 of the real big ones, and some of those made 1 million cigars a year. Something like the Peter Jacobson and Otto Albrecht, Nicholas Cunin, Harkert, Birdhawk. Those are 5 of the largest ones in Davenport. And in my book, I have pictures. You know, when you read a book, you don't like to just do a lot of reading. You don't like to see a lot of data and information. Well, I make sure in my book that there's an awful lot of pictures, because pictures mean a lot more to me than I can tell you. If I tell you the name of something, you're not going to remember that or even know what it was. So I bought a lot of props along today, and you're more than welcome to come up after the talk, and you can look at everything that I have here, and I'll explain it to you as I go. So people say, okay, now where did all this tobacco come from that you people made all these cigars with? Anybody take a guess where the tobacco came from in this area?
Wisconsin.
It's a cash crop for a while.
It was a cash crop. Somebody said Wisconsin.
It was grown in Jackson County.
Jackson County had tobacco, yeah, absolutely. Up around Viroqua and Cuba City in Wisconsin, they still make grow a lot of tobacco. And as you drive up through there in the fall, you'll see the leaves hanging upside down, drying in those barns. Okay? It also came from Kentucky, some from Virginia, and we even imported it from Holland. Holland was a big importer for tobacco for this Davenport area. Now, when we get back to the stripper thing, what was a stripper? You took this great big leaf about this size, and you stripped it down. There's a membrane ever so often in there, and you'd strip that down the membrane, and you'd have a piece of leaf that was something that could be pliable and roll up. Well, you took that leaf, after you ground up the dry stuff, you made tobacco out, or made the cigar tobacco out of that. You'd roll that in the leaf, and you'd put it in a mold like this. This is a cigar mold here. That's what it's part of. That's what the cigar mold looked like. They would roll that up very tight, and so at the end of that, they would be sealed because they wanted to keep that moisture in that cigar. Okay, well, at these cigar places, they probably had hundreds and hundreds of these sitting there where they would roll these cigars, and then the guys would roll them and put them into here. But the stripper was the person that actually stripped the leaf off to make the cigar roll. At the outside of the cigar, the cigar would look like this when you got it. Then each of the companies would have their own band around the cigar to identify it, and you would you'd go to the why was it so popular? You know, these guys love their cigars. So every morning on the way to work, they'd stop at a place and they'd buy 3 cigars, morning, noon, and night for their cigars. And they would have to be kept moist, so they're kept in humidors where they had moisture put into those. Or when you were at the cigar store in the morning, stuff dried out overnight. So what the cigar people would do at the stores, they sold them at cigar stores, they sold them at drug stores, grocery stores, taverns, or any other novelty place that might be, like even a 5 and 10 cent store. And what would happen is, as they dried out at night, if you didn't have them in a humidor, they took this little thing here, it's called a spritzer light. It says Davenport, Iowa. This is the company. Sternberg was a company that manufactured this stuff, plus they manufactured they sold the molds and all. What you did is you put water in this little cup right here. There's a hole in the cup. And then you would blow across this hole. This acted as a venturi, if you know what a venturi is. It creates a vacuum in this tube and pulls the moisture up. So you'd go along to each of your cigar cases and blow that. Get some moisture back in there every day. So that's a little cigar spritzer. Like I said, we had 3 cigars a day. And this is what the cigar thing basically looked like. You had a pocket in your shirt. You carried this little case opened up. Carried your 3 cigars, see, about the same size as the mold, you see. And then what they would do is the individual manufacturers, this one says Otto Albrecht Cigars, Davenport, Iowa on it. So they'd like to personalize their own cases so everybody knew what kind of cigars they were smoking. So that was called a cigar case. So you got it in the morning, you smoked one at noon, at your lunchtime, you smoked one in the evening. So that would be called a 3 cigar day. And almost all the cigar cases that I have like this, even some that aren't marked, are all 3. So I made that up, I guess, because everybody had three cigars in hand. And that's what I assumed they did. Some probably smoked even more than that. Okay. They had all kinds of different advertising in the cigar business. Everybody wanted to be, you know, it's just like today's news. They want to get you on TV. They want to show you their wares and make everything so exotic looking that you want to buy that. Well, every one of the cigar manufacturers, this would be like a cigar box from the Peter Jacobson Company. This is called the Brown Beauty cigar. They would do a nice fancy box with a nice litho, and everybody competed with this, so they were real fancy lithos. So then every cigar box that you had a nail in it to close the box. So you had to have something to open the box and close the box. Well, what we have up here are cigar box openers. I have 19 different ones from Davenport that are advertising for each of the different companies that were in Davenport. So you had a thing that I'll show you when you, later anybody's welcome to come up and look at the stuff and ask me questions. But you would open the box with, there's a pry on each one of these openers, and then there's a little hammer on it, you can tap it back closed. And somebody just asked me when I walked in the door if something about a cigar box. They said, how do you know where it's at? Well, it's a federal law that anybody that makes cigars, it was the Federal Firearms and Tobacco Act, which made them do this, but every cigar box you have will have a factory number on it. It'll have the number of cigars, which is that little 50 there. This is the 50th box. This is the 3rd District of Iowa, which Davenport was in, and it has the cigar box number on it. I have 240 different cigar boxes from Davenport alone. So people say, how do you know it was the biggest? And I said, well, you find me another town in the world that has 240 different cigar boxes, or 239 different manufacturers, and I'll tell you that's why we were called the cigar capital of the world. We're also known as the wash machine capital of the world because we had 7 different wash machine companies in Davenport that made the old type wash machine with the wooden slats around it, and some of you have probably seen them. Some they ran with motors and drive belts off of tractors and things like that. But So the cigar box was kind of a thing, and why did they last? Well, people used them when they got done with cigars. Grandma or Mom would put her buttons in it. Dad would put his nuts and bolts in it. So those things lasted for years, and we didn't throw much away, especially during the Depression years. You know, everybody kind of hung on to everything, whether it was a bag or a sack or a box or whatever. We used it, we reused it for something. We recycled it for something at that time. So this is what this would be a typical cigar box that I have. So they tried to decorate the box up with, they got an Indian on this one, and their particular cigar trimmer for this company also has this logo on their cigar trimmer, which shows up to be that, which is kind of decorative. Everybody's heard about Hickey Brothers Cigars in Davenport. They had 143 stores across the country. He started in about 1902, and he went out of business. He went broke in 1956. They closed it up. But Bill Hickey had his own personal cigar box, which sat on his desk, and this happens to be this box. And I have a picture of his secretary, who actually gave me this box probably 35 years ago or so. And I have a picture of her, and then she wrote on there, "This is Bill Hickey's cigar box." So this is the personal one that sat on his desk. That's her handwriting there. So it's kind of a thing, you know, you don't get to see these things very often, but I'll tell you something very strange about Hickey's. They never made a cigar. They sold millions of them, but they were all made by somebody else's factory. They never had a cigar factory. Many of them were made by Davenport, local ones, and I can tell you, if you show me the Hickey Brothers box, which I have several of, I have a small one here. Look at the box on the bottom. It'll tell you where this was made. This one was made at factory number 250 in Davenport, which I think is a Nicholas Cunin factory in Davenport. This is one of their small boxes here. And this one contained, I think this one contained 20, but they were small cigars. But they never made a cigar, but they sold millions and millions. That was their business. They also had a little diner in every one of their places where you could get lunch. They sold beer. They sold. You could get a milkshake. You could get anything you wanted. They even sold milk by the quarts. They have Hickey cigar or Hickey Brothers milk bottles, which I have one of those too. But that was the kind of the cigar box thing that's going. Also, how many people ever went to the fair or the carnival when they were young? I know that there's most of you people have all been to a carnival or a fair. And what would the kids do at the carnival? You'd walk around, you'd want to see what's in the sideshow, you want to see what's on the rides, you like the rides. But also they had they always had the guy, the strong man, he'd hit the thing trying to ring the bell and win the cigar, but they'd always say, "Close but no cigar." Well, you've heard that saying before. Well, if you didn't win the cigar, if you did hit it, you won the cigar. This is what the cigar looked like. Wow. And then what you would do is, boy, I'm going to sure be, I was a strong man, so I liked that thing. I'd walk around the fairgrounds, pick carnival grounds with that, smoking that cigar, showing everybody that I was the one that won the cigar. So that's what they called it, a jumbo perfecto. So. The types of advertising they had. They had tip trays, we call it tip tray. A tip tray was something when you used to serve a fancy meal, they would put that on the tray, and then if you left a tip, you put that on it. It's called tip trays. They're very popular with the beer industry. You'll see a lot of those with the beer industry. That's a little tip tray. They also had, for advertising, they have like a pocket mirror. This is a pocket mirror from Harker. This is kind of bad, but I have a better one at home. But you carried that in your pocket, so every time you went and looked at yourself in the mirror, oh, you got somebody else's advertising on the back side. So that was a way of advertising. So that was one of their advertising pieces. They had match holders, several different types of match holders that you could take your matches in. These two happen to be from Harkert Cigar Company in Davenport. And if you can't see from way back there, don't worry, because it'll all be up here on the counter. You can come up and see it after we get done. So, but in other words, a lot of times you'd want to buy some pipe tobacco. Well, then you'd want to say, oh, what kind of pipe tobacco do I want? They all had clippings left over. When you got through with the cigar making, they'd probably sweep the floor up and you wouldn't know. You'd probably get a little thing besides the clippings, you know. But anyhow, you could sample that and put it in a little pipe like this and smoke it. Well, that's good stuff. I want a can of that. And there's several different types available. Well, this one happens to be from Bird Hawk Cigar Company. It's etched right into the pipe. So it's kind of a rare piece to find, but I just happen to have two of these. So, but that was a sample pipe. You see these fancy, the old movies, you see the women with their long cigars, the cigarettes in these cigarette holders, or small cigars. Well, these are called little cigar holders. This happens to be a Harkert from Davenport. You put your little cigar on the end of it. You can smoke it with a tip, so you can smoke it down pretty far without burning your fingers. Back in 1912 and 1913, baseball was a very big thing in Davenport. We did a lot of advertising for Davenport. A lot of cigar companies that were there would put a sign in the window, "Baseball Today," which meant at the baseball park, which we had several in Davenport. In fact, we even had Babe Ruth play in Davenport in 1916 in one of our parks. And in 1912 and 1913, Harkert Cigar Company put the baseball schedule for the whole season on the back of a little token like that. So you could carry that in your pocket. Is there a ball game today? You get that up. Yeah, I think there is. It says right here on my schedule, I got a baseball game today. So that was another form of their advertising and keeping people interested in their brands of cigars. Of course, you had to have a keychain back then. It was better to have a keychain than have a cigar on it. So on that cigar, it says Yoakum Brothers, which was a brand that they called the YB brand, and they were actually distributed by like a grocery distributor. Like we had the Western Grocer, La Tomasino Company, different grocery places, and the YB Yoakum Brothers is one of their distributors. But they gave you a little cigar with a tea cane to carry your keys on. So that would remind you, when you take your keys out, oh yeah, I gotta smoke a Yoakum Brothers next time, see? Of course, everybody had to comb their hair, so we have a little comb and a comb case, and this one is from Papoose Cigars, which we had a couple of different ones in Davenport. Actually, what these people did, they'd make their own cigar, but it was so popular, they would sell that to somebody else, say in Pennsylvania or New York or out west, and the Papoose became a very popular brand among different ones, but there's two in Davenport that made the Papoose. It was the Cunin and the Simon Company made Papoose cigars. But here's a little comb from the Main Street cigar store that says Papoose Cigars. You can't see it from here. And then the little case that it came in. So you had to comb your hair. Well, you got to look at, you got to be saying, I'm going to buy Papoose cigars, you know. Even a pencil clip that slid on your old, how many people remember those when you had the old wooden pencils we used in school and you had a thing to clip it onto your pocket? Well, there's a little pocket clip from Harkert Cigar Company. So they had many, many ways of advertising different things from the cigar industry. Had key rings. I didn't have all of these open. So we talked a little bit about cigar trimmers. When you went into the store, you'd have a cigar trimmer on the counter because when they made these cigars, they were pretty tight on both ends when they wrapped them up because they wanted to keep the moisture in. So what you do is, in the old Western movie, you see the guy buy a cigar and he bites the end off and spits it out, you know. Well, that was kind of a rough way of doing it. So what they did in the modern days, they had cigar trimmers setting on the counters. So when you bought your 3 cigars in the morning, you just took your cigar and you pushed one end on, you turned it over, and what it did, it had a cutter that came through like this, and it cut that tip off. So then you could put it in your case and carry it in your pocket. Well, the counter trimmers were in all the different stores. Of course, when the manufacturer made them, he'd say, oh, I want them to buy my cigar, so I'll give them a cigar trimmer for their store. Well, I have 5 different tabletop cigar trimmers, which you just don't find any. You go to the big cities, you don't hardly find them, you know. And in Iowa, I have a friend that collects Iowa ones, and he's got some just nice ones, but he's got like 1 from each town. He's never heard of the rest of it, you know. So from Davenport, it was so big that we had at least 5 that I know of. And I chased those for many years. I knew that there should be one for Otto Albrecht, and I waited for 25 years, and one night I got a call here about a year ago from a friend of mine in Fairfield, Iowa, and he said, have you got an Otto Albrecht? I said, you know I don't have an Otto Albrecht. And he said, I got one. So, and I thought that was the one that should have been there for 25 years that I chased, so I ended up with the Otto Albrecht also. It's not in the book because my book was written about 3 years ago, and that's very new to me. So we're talking about cigar trimmers. This is a Zeppelin, and this is a trimmer here. On the end of it, it's a very highly unique, fancy trimmer. But you see the end here, I push up the bottom right here, and that trims the cigar. Stick the cigar in there, and that trims the cigar. But it's really a highly unusual piece. I acquired that probably in the last year. And I don't normally buy cigar stuff if it's not from Davenport, but this was one that was so unique I had to have. Here's another unique one that I didn't have before. It's a little gal, and she does a curtsy. See how she curtsies? And you stick the cigar in the hole, and then you squeeze it like that, and she curtsies and cuts the cigar off for you. That's not Davenport either, but it's so unusual I had to have it. This is one that's a trick one. You can't open it. It won't open. So if you turn it upside down, you can open it. Then you can trim the cigar. So it says on here it's a trick lock cigar cutter. So it's just a little different. Now, you think about a light a cigar, if I didn't have my some people had cigar lighters that you could just push a button and it would light a light. It's got a battery in it, still a little flame would come up. They had a little wick that had some kerosene or something on it. Well, to light a cigar is a little more than lighting a cigarette. You take a regular match and you can light a cigarette easy, but to light a cigar, darn that match is burning me, I got to light another one. Well, this is what a cigar match looks like. See how much burn they give you on a cigar match? And that's from Davenport, one of the Ferd Hawk manufacturers. So this book of matches is probably right around 1900. So how did it survive? But it did. This is one that a friend of mine, he's since deceased, he's probably in his hundreds now. He saw an article about my cigar thing in the paper one year. I used to have an article written every year by a gal by the name of Alma Gall. She wrote for the Quad City Times. Very, very top nationwide writer. She'll be writing her 19th or 20th story for me this year for my show, which will be in August in Davenport at the KC's. And when she wrote those articles, I would get a lot of response from people, different calls, oh, I got this or I got that. And the year that she wrote about my cigars, a friend of mine in Burlington, Iowa, he used to be in Davenport, he sent this to me with a letter and said I should have this. What they did was they took a coin. This coin is dated 1791. The guy must have been a skilled craftsman. He cut that in two and put a guts in it for trimming a cigar. So this is what it looks like. So you can carry that in your pocket and see the little guillotine that comes down and trims the cigar off on the end. Yeah, so it wasn't Davenport, but it's so precious I had to keep it, especially from a good friend of mine. Let's see. Am I burning up too much time?
No, you're
No.
doing well.
One of my interests is I love old buildings, businesses, people who are just people in Davenport who are historical. So I do a lot of research on that. And one of the nice things about those old cigar buildings, they were built so well, they stayed up, and they're still in buildings today. They've been repurposed for other things. We have several of the buildings in Davenport yet. We have the Bird Hawk cigar place, and it's on 4th Street in Davenport. We have the Peter Jacobson cigar place, and it's on 3rd and 4th and Harrison Streets. We have the Harcourt Cigar Company building, and it's down on 4th and Taylor Streets. We have the old Raphael Cigar Place, and we have the Globe Cigar Company, which was started by Peter Jacobson's son. That building is still standing in Davenport. And so I love to drive around and look at all the old buildings and think of, well, how would, and some of these people hired, they had between 100 and 200 employees working in these places, and they were turning out 1 million cigars a year, some of them. I mean, it was unbelievable. But they weren't all smoked in Davenport. A lot of them were shipped to places in the east, you know, that would buy them. Hickey Brothers even had a cigar store in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York. So they were pretty famous. They had one in Cuba, they had them in Florida, but a lot of their cigars were made in Davenport, Pennsylvania, New York. They had some made in Cuba. They had them made all over, but they really did a fantastic job at selling cigars. That was their big thing. And every once in a while I get to see a piece of advertising I've never seen from there. But I have a lot of cigar advertising pieces, of course. And then Bonnie asked me if I might say a few words about your brewing industry here in Maquoketa. Well, you had some nice breweries in Maquoketa. One of them, early one, was called the Dostal Brewing Company. They were in business till about 1906 here in Maquoketa, and then they sold out to Fritz Stameley. And Fritz Stameley was a pretty popular guy. In fact, you have some bottles that are embossed. I have 2 different bottles from the Dostal Brewery that are embossed, and I have an embossed picnic bottle from the Fritz Stameley. And there should be a few around in this town yet, I would think. I know several people that have collectors. Well, I guess I am a collector because I collect Burriana, I collect cigars, I collect, you name it. I have about 2,000 old pictures of Davenport. I collect all the old bills, the old billings, the bill heads, the envelopes. I have 180 some rulers, advertising rulers from Davenport. I have over 800 matchbooks from Davenport. But the Fritz Stameley, it was a good brewery, and they actually had an embossed picnic bottle, and that's about the only bottle I've really seen from Stameley. Some of you people may have seen something different up in this area, but they had a good brewery. But they were one of the pre-Prohibition breweries, and they went out of business with when Prohibition came in and never came back. Davenport was one of the few that came back. The Independent Brewing and Malting Company in Davenport. They were actually formed in 1905, or I'm sorry, 1895. They closed during the Prohibition and actually came back to the brewery named Zollers, spelled Z-O-L-L-E-R-S. They came back on May the 1st of 1935. They were in business for 10 years, and then they were getting short on money, so they reorganized it, called the Black Hawk Brewing Company, which may be more popular to you, because that was in business from 1945 to 1952. In 1952, the Updorf Company, which had the buildings right next door to it, they decided that it was going to go bankrupt. It was in bankruptcy. And when it went into bankruptcy, Uchtdorf bought it and they thought they could make a go of it. And they ran it until 1956, but the big breweries are the ones that really killed all of it. So we had the same problem. We had the same problems up in Potosi. But actually, Potosi came back and lasted until about 1970s, into the early around 1972 maybe. And so we have a going thing up there now. In fact, we've just doubled the size of our brewery. We're going to be shut down for 3 weeks. We're putting in a new canning line, new bottling line, new boiler, new tanks, new everything. We built another building onto that, which is 40 feet high. It's an interesting place to go. I was going to try to get enough free passes to get in the museum for you people, but I didn't have access to them yesterday. I had a board meeting and I couldn't get to them. So, but next time I come, I'll bring free passes for the museum, so you can all go up and look at the museum. And they have a brewery tour if you want it. You could take it. It costs a little bit of money, but I think they upped the tickets to $8 to get in the museum, but you'll all be able to get in free and have free beer tasting afterwards. So, but I'm sorry I don't have those today, but I'll bring those along. And that kind of concludes what I have. If there's any questions, you can ask me questions, or we can you can come up here and look at the stuff, and I can explain anything that anybody wants to look at. It's getting on towards the time. It's 20 minutes to 1. I think you guys are all through at 1, so that'll probably eat up most of that time. So, okay.
Do tobacco leaves change in their flavor according to where they're grown, and how do you get flavor into tobacco or into the cigars?
Well, I would say probably it's just like growing corn and soybeans. Whatever the ground will provide for you, for that will give you the taste. You know, it's I don't know what kind of fertilizers they used back then or things like that, but I know one thing, that you can take a cigar that's 100 years old, such as one of these, and a friend of mine put it in his humidor and soaked it up, and he actually smoked it.
Yeah.
And I said, and that's within the last month.
Yeah.
And I said, well, how was it? And he said, not too bad. So evidently the tobacco is something that just doesn't deteriorate that much, or the flavor in it when you do that. But if you get this thing moisturized again, it will. You can smoke it. I never was much of a smoker, but
Probably use Merle Common or that.
probably, yeah.
Okay, Wooden Indians, was that outside a tobacco store?
Yep, they call them cigar store Indians.
Okay,
In fact, I have a picture of one my friend just bought one. I was so upset that I didn't get it. He was at a sale over in Illinois someplace, and he said they had this Indian come up, and I said, man, that looks really old. He said, I think it is. So it's an all-hand carved one. It says cigars on the bottom, and it's really a neat piece. It's about 6'6" tall. He's got it in one of his display rooms, and it's what they call them cigar store. And most of the cigar stores had those in front of them.
so when they had their 3 cigars a day, how much did that cost them?
Probably 2 for a nickel, or 2 for a dime, or nickel a piece, or 2 for a nickel. They were really, really cheap. Like today, they tell me you could spend up to $25 to $50 for a good cigar.
Really?
I mean, the $10 cigar is almost a thing of the past anymore. So, yeah. I know people that go to these cigar lounges, they call them. We've got 3 or 4 of them in Davenport, and they'll go there, sit with the people that smoke, because nobody wants them smoking at home. You can't smoke in a restaurant, you can't smoke in a public place. But the wives don't want them at home smoking, so they all go to these lounges and tell lies and smoke cigars.
And get through the cloud of smoke.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Will any of your HR, are they interested in this, like say for?
I have one son that's kind of interested in the beer industry. He started collecting cans. In fact, that's how I got started collecting beer memorabilia. He was probably 8 years old, and that one's 62 now. So that's been 50-some years ago. I started collecting I didn't like cans. He liked cans, you know. But cans are an amazing thing. I belong to about 6 different organizations, and I get these magazines that show the auctions and so forth. And I had a good friend from Des Moines, and I said to him one day, I knew of a can that sold. It was a prototype can, and it sold for $104,000. And I said to him, I said, you sold that can, didn't you? And he said, I can't say. I said, what do you mean you can't say? He said, I can't say. Well, about a year ago, he called me, and he said, now I can say, because I promised the person that I sold to, I would never tell who sold it to him. But it's been resold again for $121,000. And he said, I didn't get to sell it this time, and he said, I can tell you now that I did sell it originally for $104,000. That's a crazy beer can. But you've got signs out there that are selling for $60,000, $70,000. You know, you've got a sign right down here in your museum, Fritz Stanley. You put that thing on the internet, you know, it might be a $30,000 or $40,000 sign. Only one now, it's, you know. And there's people out there that got deep pockets that like the stuff, and they don't care. They just say, buy it, you know. Well, I was in the auction business for 43 years, besides being an engineer with the power company. And I'd have people come to me and say, I'd say, well, how much do you want to bid on this? And they said, well, just buy it. You know, I'd say, well, what if it goes for $200? I said, buy it. You know, they wanted it, and they had deep pockets, and they were going to buy it. You know, so that's the way things went. So, and it's that way kind of today. But with the internet, you know, you're not looking at just a local town or the whole United States. You're looking at the whole world. And some of these people in foreign countries, you know, they're billionaires, and we don't even know them. You know, when they buy that type of thing. Yeah, I knew a guy that he was real high up. He was a general in the army here. His can collection was worth over $1.5 million. Just his can collection. People say, who'd pay that? I said, if you want to find out, just put it online. You'll find out who'll pay for it. You know. Yeah. So.
Is that empty or full?
That's empty. Empty and dry, because if people don't know, if you leave your can full of the moisture in it, you'll actually get moisture marks will come through from the inside out, and so it'll actually ruin that can. So you got to be really careful how you store this stuff. You want a beer can to be completely dry, I'll guarantee you.
Are there any cigar companies still in Davenport?
No, not since 1956.
Oh.
We sell a lot of cigars, but we don't have anybody that manufactures them anymore. Yeah.
What made Cuban cigars so popular?
Their tobacco, they had where they grew the tobacco in Cuba was really good ground for growing tobacco. You know, the tobacco has to have certain help with their fertilizers and stuff that we don't use for corn and beans, and those people down there had the right ground. You know, it's just like why they grow pineapples in Hawaii, because they got the best pineapple trees, I guess, and they flourish there, don't flourish here. You know, so that was just the kind of the king of the crop for tobacco was out of Cuba. You know, but we had just as good a tobacco around here. People say that. I've talked to some old timers years ago, but of course I've been around since 37, you know, so I know a lot of old timers, not many left anymore, but I'm now the old timer, so. But I love Davenport history, anything have to do with Davenport. I've got volumes and volumes of paper and articles, advertising pieces. I have a trade token collection that says, I have about 500 Davenport tokens in it. I have a Hickey Brothers token book, which Hickey Brothers is real good at giving out. Good for one cigar, good for 10 cents in trade, things like that. And I have a book of Hickey, just Hickey's alone, about 400 tokens from the Hickey Brothers cigar stores all over the country. So, but yeah, anything that's Davenport on it, I get interested in. And on Wednesday afternoon, I have a history club at my house, and what we do is sometimes we have a show and tell. People bring things to show, and we always find a subject that we get on, and we start looking, researching either a business or a name or a building or something that happened, an historical event in Davenport. And people bring their computers and they're all looking for stuff. We got all who's buried in all the cemeteries. We can find out where they were. We get obituaries off of that. We get a lot of things. So very interesting to me. Anyhow, maybe other people think it's just nothing, but if you like history, and I think this group here's kind of history oriented. So.
I just hope one of the kids keep that going.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Well, some of it I'll probably give to the museums. But, I don't, who wants 240 different cigar boxes?
So I have two museum questions.
Okay.
In our depot out here, we have a cigar box from a little tobacco manufacturer, cigar manufacturer in Belleville. It's called a narrow gauge cigar. It's just a little box. It's going to, have you ever come across those?
No, but I haven't, but I have a cigar box from Grand Mountain. I have one from Long Grove. I have one from, I think, Calamus. I think that name might have been because of the narrow gauge railroad that ran through there and up through Delmar and across the, right below here where your drive-in theater is, there's a berm on each side. And when I was in high school, this is back in the early 50s now, I would drive to Maquoketa because I had a girlfriend up here in Maquoketa back then. And
What's her name?
her name was Sharon Westfall. Everybody know the Westfall?
I know her well. I know her well. She's
Wonderful gal, wonderful gal. She married a nice guy from Delmar.
Dick Dennis.
Yeah, and then the other gal that we used to come up with, well, I used to come up with my friend Jerry Ailes because when we were freshmen in high school, his dad bought him a brand new Ford car. And his girlfriend, his name was Mary Buddy. Does anybody know Mary Buddy?
Buddy's over there.
Bellevue.
Well, she lived up north of Maquoketa, or north of Maquoketa here, yeah. And then I had a girlfriend in Lost Nation whose name was Carmen Ailes.
Oh, yeah, I knew Carmen.
You knew Carmen? Yeah. She got killed in an airplane accident. Well, her first cousin Jerry Ailes and I were best of friends all through school. And then his son, Chris Ailes, is the one that's renovated all the old schools and for elderly housing in Davenport. He's done like 8 or 9 buildings so far. Yeah, and so yeah, I was at that drive-in there. That drive-in's been a long time.
So my other question is, so at the other building, and maybe you saw it when you were there, we have a little cigar thing. It's set in the middle of the table. We're told that it came from the old Decker house. And it had a cigar nipper
Yeah.
on each end. So, and then it had 2 candles that they would light.
Sure.
So you could cut off the ends of the cigar and you could light your cigar. And then it had a tray in the middle that maybe you flipped your ash, you put your end,
that's
and
very
it
possible.
flipped. And we also know that that was used by USS Grant when he came to the Decker house and would smoke cigars and talk to Swigert, the newspaper editor, his friend. So we do have that.
Funny you should mention the Decker house because in 1954, I was in high school and a bunch of us guys decided we'd come to Maquoketa for a night, so we stayed in the Decker house. So we, I can say, to my fame, I've been to say that your famous Decker house here. And we had a ball in Maquoketa.
Well, I thank you so much. Any more questions?
Oh, I got one other thing.
Okay.
I have a cigar box here from Maquoketa.
This one.
Yeah. And this box here, I think should be in your museum. So I'm going to donate this box. It's called the Old McCaffrey and Company, Maquoketa, Iowa. And you can come up and look at it, but it's a very good shaped box.
It is.
And it even has the, well, it has nice graphics all around in the box, you know. So you can come up and look at that, but I'm going to donate that to whoever
Wow.
goes here.
Thank you.
You should have it. Yeah, it probably was a name that they had, yeah, but it says Maquoketa on the box, and it says Maquoketa inside, real nice.
So what did you call the label on the inside of the
Just Oh, also, I forgot to tell you, every cigar box not only had the nail, but they also had to have a federal band on it. And I kind of collect these bands too, especially just the local ones. I don't try to get them, but you'll see on those different bands. I know, I have friends who collect these bands, but I try to get the cigar bands off of it. So this one has a nice orientation of a cigar band.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
That's
You
awesome.
betcha. You betcha. So I'll do that with you.
Okay.
Anything I'm looking at? Anybody wants to come up and see my guy?
Marcella has one that she wants signed. So we'll sign it.
Oh, yeah, I told her I would sign it.
She's busy back there talking.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
So this is gonna be a bridge.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. No problem. No problem whatsoever.
And I'm gonna get
That
that
makes you see a little better. Was it entertaining?